Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Bolt City Podcast. Dave Palais, Josh Palais, Mario Heron. Of course, exciting time as we're getting ready for the next game against the Raiders. As the Chargers are coming off a big win on Sunday against the Cardinals, 25-24. And guys, I'll tell you what, it's been a few days, but I'm still excited about that win. And as people have told me who are giant Charger fans and excited as well, saying that was the most exciting game of the year. Some people have said to me this move, and kind of know if you guys fall in this category. Exciting because the Chargers were able to pull that out and win, or just saying they happen to run up against a team that has worse luck than they do, and that's why the Chargers won that game. The Cardinals lost that game, which kind of felt like you're taking something away. I don't know. I kind of felt bummed out hearing it that way. Is it a glass half empty, glass half full? How do you guys feel?
Glass half full. If you win the game, you win the game. It's not our problem that the Cardinals are a mess. We're usually the team in that position, so I have no sympathy whatsoever for the team that screws it up. Somebody said, the Cardinals did three and outs to end the game, and the Chargers finally scored on their last drive. Good for us. We're going to take advantage of those situations. We're not going to charge it. We're going to let the other team do it this time.
I completely agree. I keep refreshing Hulu. Free ad right there. You're welcome, Hulu. To see the Hard Knocks episode of Cardinals, because I just want to see them just fall apart. Like I want to see their highs of they think they have it, and then it fall apart. I can't wait to watch that. But yeah, feeling good. A couple days after it, it's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like you're not like mad on Monday morning because you're like, okay, at least like we won. Like it's like bad, maybe bad that like that has such an effect on my outlook of the day. But like at the same time, hey, when it's a W, it's a good outlook. It's a good thing. It's a good problem to have.
You know what's interesting also about that is you look at the Chargers and everything they do, and you go, if that was the other way around, let's say it was the Chargers who were in the Cardinals situation, the Cardinals won on a 2-point conversion at the very end, we'd be extremely upset and devastated by that. But Mari, I'm like you. I mean, sports does that to me. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is, did my teams win yesterday? And for me, waking up Monday morning, man, I was in a great mood.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love being in the situation where we're not out of it. If we were out of the playoffs, it'd be really hard doing the show with you guys. I'd be pissed off all week more than I usually am when we drop a game because I know the season's over. I have nothing to look forward to. I asked a question to my friend. Would you rather have your fantasy team win or your NFL team win during the week? And it's a no-brainer for me. It's the NFL team. Nobody gives a crap about my fantasy team but me. So, of course, I'm going to root for the Chargers throughout the whole season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I had that thing with my brother the other day. I was like, if my fantasy team's losing, I really hope my favorite team's winning and my bets are hitting, because then I can handle it. But if my bets are missing and then my favorite team's winning, I can still handle it. But if all three are missing, I'm having a terrible weekend. Like UNC lost twice this weekend in basketball. For those that know, I'm a big UNC basketball fan, as Dave and Josh both are. The Bulls got embarrassed by the Thunder. I was like, dude, Chargers, just give me some hope. Give me something. My fantasy team got ruined. I'm throwing them in the trash can, pissing on them. They're done. So having that Chargers win, that was like me hanging on to just not going insane right now. So I don't know about you, Dave. I imagine you'd feel the same. But you've been passionate about your fantasy team. Every time we log on here, you're always doing your, gosh, damn it. You're always doing a little bit of that. So I'm always curious.
Well, so you brought up something that it really is the difference of the NFL, and we always say this all the time, man. What a sport, what a league, right? We always say a one possession league, and that's what it is. I mean, talking about the Charger game, that's exactly what happened for us the other day, and it happens most of the time. It's that one possession on what can happen. Even if you watch that matchup on Monday Night Football, Colts and Steelers, even to the end, you weren't sure what was going to happen, and could Matt Ryan and Jeff Saturday figure it out? But for the NFL and in California, where Josh and I are right now, gambling is illegal. You can't do it like in the rest of the country. But the NFL used to always play the game like we know gambling's a huge part of the league. We just can't talk about it. But in reality, that's why those Thursday injury reports mean everything. And if you lie on those, you get fined. I mean, come on. Why would you fine a team for lying on an injury report if it didn't matter, if it didn't affect absolute money? But the NFL, not only do you have your team to root for, you have your bets to root for, and you have your fantasy league. I mean, which also equals money. So one's your heart and two are money. And it's genius. I mean, I say this all the time. It is such a mastermind business when you think you only play 17 games a year, yet you're talking about this sport the entire calendar, except for basically, I'd say basically July 1st through training camp. You have about 2 weeks off. Otherwise, you're always talking NFL, either getting ready for camp, the draft, the Super Bowl, the playoffs, everything. It never stops. Man, the marketing and the way they have figured out the sports calendar is insane.
I think the NFL draft by itself, just the first round, I'll just go first round, is better than all the WNBA season, all of tennis, all of golf for me. I love the NFL
Better
draft.
than the World Series. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, better than the World Series. That's when everybody has hope. Every team is watching. Everybody's tuned in. I love the NFL draft. How many states can you not gamble? Obviously, California is one. Does anybody know the answer to that? How many states aren't able to gamble? Because that's just a huge loss for the NFL. I know the NFL has to be pissed that California can't pass the law.
And the deal is, there's gambling. It's just people aren't capitalizing on it legally. Yeah. You know what I mean? We all know that the gambling's taken place. I mean, come on. Even when it's March Madness time and you're doing the brackets in your office and you're handing those around, man, that's illegal as hell too. The FBI's not kicking in the door and saying, "Hey, wait a second, I hear there's sheets going around. We found one in the copier. Everybody that filled out one of these sheets, we got to talk to you." It doesn't work that way, but it's one of those where, who are you kidding? I mean, California, because you and I here, Josh, it's whether you put $10 on it, you put $2,000 on a game, and you are interested in that game because number one, you want to prove you were right. Two, it's always fun to put a little bit of dough on it. I mean, I'm jealous of Mario when we talk about the bets that he's putting on. He's a little over the top, but he's at the same time he's having a blast. We're missing out on one of the great exciting factors of the NFL.
Yeah, like why have a job when you can just make $100 in an hour?
Gambling in California is like when you were a kid and they said if you download the music through like the YouTube to MP3 converter, you're going to get arrested. Obviously never happens, but it's so funny that people are just going to do it anyways. I mean, I don't want to go off the rails with the show, but it's like marijuana for a lot of places, right? People are going to find a way to smoke marijuana, even if it's illegal. People are going to find a way to gamble. Why not just legalize it as soon as possible?
Yeah, it's just like, you don't think I can find a legal book real quick? It's really not that hard. There's so many like different like little levels right now. Like I can find the Delta 8 version of sports gambling on some website. Like it's really truly not that hard to do it anymore. Like the states that aren't legal, it's really weird. Like Hawaii, Idaho, Bama, Alaska. Well, I don't even know if anyone's in Alaska. They're probably hunting bears instead of watching the Chicago Bears. So like that part's kind of probably iffy with them having it. But yeah, California, man. I mean, you guys kind of have it all. You get the weather. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a bad day in California. You guys just need to figure out the sports gambling, and then you're all set. Yeah. Then it's the best state in America.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand why we don't have it, but again, it was just voted down here, and it's going to be a long time before California sees it. But again, the NFL is able to capitalize on this over and over again. The fantasy football is outstanding as far as everyone getting excited about their drafts and their teams, and it's just an amazing sport the way they have figured this out. When I was a kid, to age myself, Major League Baseball was the number one sport. It was it. And then, I mean, not that old, but at the same time, before me even, people would go to college, which college football was big, and then they wouldn't even go to the NFL. They just go find a real job. Yeah, it's the NFL. Why would I want to play for the Bears? I'll just go get a job working for my dad at the gas station. It was like people turned it down all the time to go pro when it came to football. From Pete Rozelle to Roger Goodell, man, the commissioners have figured out to make this bigger and better over and over again. And we saw it ourselves. I mean, we were on the winning end of things again, 25-24 over the Cardinals on Sunday. And how great was that? One thing I want to say about the Cardinals before we move on. Cliff Kingsbury is supposed to be an offensive genius. One of these guys like Miami has, like the Rams have, like the 49ers have. All these guys are supposed to have these crazy offensive minds. Do you remember Cliff Kingsbury had to have Kyler Murray? Had to have him. Mm-hmm. You just drafted Josh Rosen as organization the year before, and you're saying, all right, we'll say goodbye to Josh Rosen because Kyler Murray's the greatest high school player that Cliff Kingsbury has ever seen, and I have to have him on my team. So overall, Kyler Murray ends up with the Cardinals. This is going to be a match made in heaven. Those two guys straight out hate each other. I mean, there's zero relationship there. It's as bad as any quarterback-coach relationship in the NFL, and it's going to come to an end after this season and go, okay, Kyler, you got another shot with the new head coach. But is Kyler Murray, guys, is he a coach killer? Is he one of those guys that it's Cliff Kingsbury's fault, or do you think Kyler Murray is a coach killer?
Mario, you answer this first.
So I'm going to go with that. It's a I think Murray doesn't help, but I think it's just Cliff Kingsbury's over his head. I don't think college coaches do well in the NFL. I think there's a lot of evidence of that happening just in the past couple of years. You look at Matt Rule, who really didn't do well. You look at Urban Meyer, of just the two recent guys that really struggled in the NFL. You go all the way back to Nick Saban, who didn't really work in the NFL. And you can even go further and further back and see just evidence of where sometimes college coaches don't really work. I think
Pete Carroll's rare. Pete Carroll's
rare.
Pete
Carroll's very rare. And to go even further, it wasn't like Cliff Kingsbury had like a killer resume in college. Like, if we're gonna be completely honest, he had Patrick Mahomes and QB.
He had a losing record with Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly,
5-7, and then took over the USC offensive coordinator's job for a day until the Cardinals offered him the head coaching job, and then took off and then went to the Cardinals. But he's supposed to be an assistant coach at USC.
Yeah, so he wasn't like this guy that had this outstanding resume. Like, it was kind of a weird random hire.
Yeah.
He's a very young guy, and I just don't – I think they were just put behind the 8 ball in the beginning, and it just kind of got worse and worse and worse over time. And I think when you have a guy that's a college coach, very inexperienced, who doesn't have a lot to his resume, and you bring in veterans such as DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, and JJ Watt, it's kind of hard to fall into that leadership and kind of buy into it when you're like, dude, I have more experience on my own resume to honestly coach this team and can do a better job of leading a group of men than you can. So I think when you have that, then with Murray, it's just kind of a dicey situation. I don't know about you, Josh. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because I'm always curious, because you had Saban, and Saban could lead Jesus to water to turn into wine. So I'm always kind of curious your thoughts just on Cliff and that whole thing.
Cliff Kingsbury was gifted that job when he didn't deserve it. You nailed it. Patrick Mahomes was his quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is probably the best player in the whole NFL. The fact that they drafted Josh Rosen the year before and said, oh my God, we have to have Kyler Murray, is just the funniest thing to me. Josh Rosen was drafted 10th overall pick. The quarterback drafted after him was Lamar Jackson. He's a pretty good football player. Kyler Murray the next year was the first overall pick. The quarterbacks after him were Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, and Will Grier. That has to be the worst quarterback class of all time. I blame the Arizona Cardinals for not doing their homework. Kyler Murray, I don't think, has ever been a likable guy. He's a great high school football player, so is a lot of other guys. He won the Heisman Trophy. We know that doesn't exactly mean you're going to be a great NFL player as well. But if you're going to be a quarterback, you need to take accountability. The fact that he said that they were schematically screwed going into that last play is just funny.
You cleaned it up.
Yeah, I cleaned it up because I have to. But you're the one that threw the ball, buddy. Like, Cliff Kingsbury's not taking snaps out there. So how are you going to blame your coach for being in the wrong scheme? If you're upset with it, then take matters in your own hands. Do you think Peyton Manning would have said we were schematically screwed? No, he would have fixed it himself right at the line of scrimmage. That's the difference between being a leader and a winner and being Kyler Murray just being a complainer.
Even if that's the case, okay, if that's the way you 100% felt and everyone on the team felt that way, dude, you don't do that to the media. You don't pass the blame that way. Nobody respects a leader that passes the blame because you aren't a leader. It's absolutely ridiculous. So at the end of the year, in a couple of weeks, you're going to see Kingsbury without a job. When I think back at Cliff Kingsbury, and he might be an offensive genius that goes back to college Mario and ends up having great success. What I think about him is going all the way back to 2020 when, or during the draft. Remember during the pandemic? Yeah. And they had everybody at their house. Do you remember Cliff Kingsbury's house? It was like different than anyone else's. And all the other coaches were like, where in the hell does this guy live? Remember, his house was insane. And I always think about that going, man, this guy's living high on the hog in Arizona right now. Look at him in Scottsdale in this crazy mansion that he's in with this crazy background and this crazy pool and living room and everything else. It was wild. It's like, I kept thinking Bill Belichick wins more than anybody. He doesn't have anything that looks like that. That was unusual. Like, hey, look what I have. Even though I don't have any trophies, never done jack squat. Look how I'm living this way. Could have easily done it the way all of us are doing it, just in a simple room. But he had to show everybody, look at me, I'm the man.
Dave, if you want to hear something that's going to make him weirder to you and kind of not like him a little bit more, in Hard Knocks they show that exact same house, and he goes, "Yeah, I love natural light. That's why I chose this place." And there's this big. Dude, like, this thing is massive, just painting of a lion. And they're like, with like a crown on it. And they go, "What's that?" And it's because I'm a Leo or whatever it is. Like, does a sign thing. And I'm like, dude, if I would have known that just in the beginning of you just taking any job in the world, I would have literally bet $1,000 on you never reaching the playoffs ever in your career. Like, dude, this guy's got no shot
He's a
at
dork.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
dork. He's a dork.
Yeah, it's safe
Oh
to
my
say
goodness.
Chargers won the Sean Payton sweepstakes. This is what it comes down to. Why would Sean Payton want to jump to a situation where your quarterback doesn't want to take any ownership at all? All right, so we saw something on the internet, which we always do, and we talk about it on this show. And it was that at the beginning of last season, Austin Ekeler has 32 total touchdowns. The next closest is Joe Mixon with 24, and that's position players, obviously not quarterbacks. Mario, 2 questions. Is this surprising to you, and is Austin Ekeler the most underrated player in the NFL?
No, it's not surprising to me for reason number one, how active he is in the run game and in the passing game. When you have someone that gets 14 carries, and then on top of that, he gets 6 receptions, the usage rate on him is just undeniable. It's huge. It's almost Saquon Barkley levels where he's so involved in every aspect of the offense. It's not really a surprise that he has put up the numbers he has, especially in reaching the end zone. And it is crazy to me of how underrated he is. And I'll say this, I'm not in a fantasy league with, the sharpest minds in all of the world. They're pretty dumb, but still, like, when we go in the year and they're like, God, Austin Ekeler is the number 2 running back, take off the board. Like, really? And I'm like, he's a pretty good player. Like, he's a pretty good running back. And they're like, but I mean, is he though? Like, he doesn't really get that many, rushing yards. But it's like, yeah, he doesn't because his line's not the best, but he does so many more things than that. Like, he impacts the game in so many different ways than that. I think that's where it kind of goes unnoticed is how low his rushing yards are, that people kind of forget about everything else that he does great and the different ways he can reach into and get into the end zone. So that's kind of just my thoughts on it. Dave, I'm curious on what you kind of think with just Ekeler and how special of a player he is compared to other running backs and other special talented players in the league.
Okay, so all of us are very aware of how good he is, right? We all know how important he is to this team. And we just talked about fantasy football and how fantasy football is so important in the NFL for their fans to understand who he is. As you said, he was a top 10 pick if you were in an NFL draft in fantasy football. At the same time, we're Charger fans. We followed this team like crazy, so we know exactly everything about Austin Ekeler. I always wonder this, though, like to know your stardom. If Austin Ekeler got on a plane in Los Angeles today, and in 5 hours or 4 hours, he lands in Indianapolis. He gets off that plane. He walks through the airport. Mario, how many people recognize him?
In Indy, I'd say 15%.
Okay.
Being completely honest, I would say 15%. Yeah.
Okay. And that's my point. So let's say I'll even go Derrick Henry, who plays in a smaller market in Nashville. Okay. Derrick Henry gets off the plane in Los Angeles and he walks through LAX. How many people recognize Derrick Henry? Dude, it's way up there.
90%.
You know what I'm saying? 90%. I understand his hair is easy to recognize him and the way he's built and everything, but you're recognizing Derrick Henry. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He's a national champion. He's known for, obviously the stiff arms and everything he's done in the NFL. My point is, if you're a huge NFL star, I'll give you another guy, Christian McCaffrey, even though he went to Stanford in California, coming from Carolina. If he were to get off a plane in Texas, you're going to recognize Christian McCaffrey. That it just shows you that, when you're a star in this league, I think the average fan can pick you out. I don't think the average fan, even if you're one of those NFL guys that has the 7 TVs in your living room and you're watching every game, I think the average fan does not pick Austin Ekeler out who he is.
Unfortunately, it's true, but it's been like that for Chargers all the time. Even when LaDainian Tomlinson was the MVP of the league, the best player in the whole NFL, I always felt that LaDainian Tomlinson never got enough credit for how good he was. I think he was a head and shoulders above every running back in the league for at least 5 years. It never seemed that way, though. People would always be talking about other guys like Ricky Williams and Sean Alexander, and they never gave LT the credit he deserved because he played for the San Diego Chargers. Even though the Chargers are in LA now, their best players aren't getting enough credit. Keenan Allen, the same thing. I think Keenan Allen is a top, 8 receiver. People don't talk about him like that. Justin Herbert, some people think he's a social media quarterback, but I think he's a top 5 quarterback as well. And people really don't give him the credit because he hasn't won the games. But if you're talking from a talent perspective, Austin Ekeler is Christian McCaffrey. Why is he not? What's the difference between Austin Ekeler and Christian McCaffrey when he was on the Panthers? They're both getting tons of receiving yards. Maybe Austin Ekeler's not getting as many rushing yards, but he's getting more touchdowns than Christian McCaffrey ever did.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to go back to your Herbert point, I just want to point this out to this. He's a social media type quarterback. To all those people with those takes out there, you sound so educated and so smart. Herbert completed his 10th career fourth quarter comeback, tied for most, by any player since 2020. He also recorded his 12th career game-winning drive, and that's second most by any QB since 2020. So that's a lot of like clutch stats and a lot of times where he's come up in big moments. And I don't know if those are posted on social media or if he posts them on social media, because I really have I ever seen a full drive posted on social media. But hey, I could be wrong. He's a social media quarterback. Snapchat rips it all the time. Biggest TikTok dancer on the world. Him and Jackson Mahomes. It's like 1 and 2 over there. So yeah. So people forget the social media legend himself, the branding genius that is Justin Herbert.
What is going to happen is the Chargers to get respect and the players to get everything they want. They got to win a Super Bowl. I mean, straight out, you have to win. Winning solves everything. So the Chargers right now, 2 teams in LA, one's a Super Bowl champion. The Super Bowl champion's having a terrible year, kind of just trying to play it out. All their stars are basically going to sit the remainder of the season. You know, we saw Allen Robinson's out. You've seen Aaron Donald, the high ankle sprain. They're going to continue to take losses. But you know what? Ram fans are going to go, we won it all last year. We'll change it all for that 1 year. The Chargers need this win and need a Super Bowl title in Los Angeles as soon as possible, not only for the fan base and the number 2 media market, but for, as you say, respect for not only Justin Herbert, for Ekeler, for the ownership group, for the fan base. You got to win, and you got to win soon, because when you're sitting there going, the Chargers have been in Los Angeles since 2017, and people still call them San Diego. It's one of those like, come on, man, there's no respect there. And when people, you know, national TV guys are saying, I refuse to call them the Los Angeles Chargers, that's just dumb. They aren't coming back to San Diego. So it's such an insult. It would be like saying, I refuse to call the Arizona Cardinals the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to continue to call them the St. Louis Cardinals because they were there since 1947. You'd sound like a fool. You know, what battle are you trying to win? Going after Justin Herbert and saying he's a social media quarterback, that's just lazy. That's just lazy for media members who don't understand Justin Herbert, don't understand the Chargers, and don't understand the NFL. It's just trying to get a reaction. And unfortunately, it went really bad. And I think anyone who watches Justin Herbert and sees the lack of talent he had around him during the majority of the season would see he's a hell of a player. Unfortunately, he didn't have wide receivers to throw to. I mean, there were games with Josh Palmer's his number 1 with no tight end to help him out. And you're going, how many other quarterbacks could have won? Josh, you might argue with me on this because I know you're a big Mahomes fan. And that's not a shot at you. Everyone's a Mahomes fan. Everyone thinks he's great. I don't know if Mahomes could have won with the players that Justin Herbert had left over during those games.
You'll never find out because the Chiefs never will put themselves in that position. Look at what they did at the trade deadline. They grabbed Kadarius Toney. They're never going to put Patrick Mahomes in a position where he doesn't have a ton of targets because that's what the Chiefs do. That's what good football teams do. Justin Herbert is a fantastic quarterback. We all know that. But you said it earlier in the season. Just because Tua is playing really good doesn't mean that Herbert can't be really good at the same time. They can both be really good. So the whole conversation on social media about Justin Herbert being a social media quarterback just is not true. Both quarterbacks can be very good. Tua is just having a really good season, not because he only has Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, it's because he's accurate with the ball. Same thing with Justin Herbert. You can complement 2 guys at the same time. ESPN did a list today. It was the top 25 players under 25 years old. And I'll just do the top 10 because we don't want to go through all 25 guys. We don't have an hour to do this, but I'll go the top 10. Number 1 is Micah Parsons. Number 2 is Justin Jefferson. Number 3 is Jamar Chase. 4 is Tristan Wirfs. 5 is Justin Herbert. 6 is Quinnen Williams. 7 is Rashawn Slater. 8 is Patrick Surtain. 9 is Jalen Hurts. And 10 is Tua. Okay, first off, the Chargers are the only team that have 2 guys in the top 10, and Alabama has the most players on there, but that's not important.
I was waiting for that one. I was waiting for that one.
I have something to add to what you just said, though. I thought was interesting. How many of those guys are SEC guys? Because you hear people say all the time, oh, it's SEC bias. You know what? NFL teams want to win. If they're grabbing guys from the SEC, that means there's talent there. I mean, out of those 10 guys you just mentioned, I think
6.
9 of it. Is it 6 only? I thought 6. It was more than that.
The ones that, yeah. So Micah Parsons obviously is Penn State.
Yeah.
You have Tristan Wirfs, who was Iowa. You have Rashawn Slater, who's Northwestern. So that's 7.
10.
So yeah.
Okay.
So three guys, but Justin Herbert, my bad. I'm sorry, Oregon. So that's Pac-12. So 6 guys, SEC. 4 out of the 6 are from Alabama, 2 are from LSU, but we're not going to talk about that.
Discussion for a different day.
Yeah, discussion for a different day. My point being is the Chargers are the only team that have 2 guys in the top 10. Mario, first off, do you agree with the order of that list, and how important is it that the Chargers have 2 guys in there?
It's huge because it's I'm going to compare this to kind of like the Golden State Warriors are trying to do in basketball, right? They kind of have James Wiseman and Kuminga, where you have like the 2 young guys coming in as the older guys, Clay and Steph are on their way out of their prime and going for like one last chance at a title. Loosely, I'm saying this loosely. I'm not saying the Chargers are the Warriors in any aspect or comparing them in any of that way. But I'm saying loosely, they're kind of doing that in that similar way, right? Where you have young talent and Herbert and Slater coming in, which is great. And you also have old, expiring, a little bit outside of their prime talent, and a guy like Mac, who's, getting there, and a guy like Allen. So I think it's a great thing to see for the Chargers where you're like, hey, we're not the Rams where all of our talent has an expiration date coming in 2 years. And where it's like a hard reset. I mean, it's like the Ring of Fire on your Xbox 360. It's the hard reset for the Los Angeles Rams coming up here soon. So I think it's a great thing for the Chargers. I think it's absolutely something that if you're a free agent, you definitely look at seeing that where you have a guy on the O-line and a quarterback. So I love it. It's great. The SEC, I'm in Big Ten country, but I will say if you want to win a football game in the NFL, you choose SEC every single time.
Yeah, it's I think it's fantastic. I mean, again, for the Chargers, some people will say, look, Rashawn Slater's hurt. So the best ability is availability. He hasn't been available. He's young, man. He was one of those guys that when the Chargers got him, he was much better than I think the average football fan thought he'd be. He was absolutely outstanding. When healthy, he is one of the better offensive linemen in the league. That it's fantastic. I agree with what Mario said. If you're a guy that's looking for a team, why wouldn't you want to go to a young team that has talent around it, plays in the best stadium in the NFL? The Chargers are appetizing, all of a sudden. They're I mean, let's be honest. If you were a player that had a chance to either join the Chargers or the Rams right now, how are you not joining the Chargers? That has to be your team, especially if there is that coaching change and you do get a guy like Sean Payton, a Super Bowl winning head coach. So you can take that off the table. Both coaches would be basically scrapped. And you say that's the future would be the Chargers. And I think the Chargers know this as well. They just have to finish out those pieces. Josh, you said something interesting when you talked about the Chiefs. You're right. The Chiefs do not put themselves in situations through injury to say a total collapse. And the Chiefs have had injuries this year. They have had their 2 most important pieces being healthy, being Mahomes and Kelsey, but they've had a ton of injuries. Guys go out with concussions and guys being lost for the season, everything else, but they keep rolling along to the point right now they're the most dominating team in the NFL. And I know we'll get into some playoff talk in a little bit, but they continue just to reload, and this machine that keeps going with that open window, which is usually unheard of. And you go, okay, what does it take for the Chargers to be in a situation that the Patriots were in for 20 years or the Chiefs are in now in this 10-year span? You want to be that team. You don't want to be the team that is saying, man, if things go our way, maybe we make it into the postseason.
The quickest way to shoot to the top is with a great quarterback. Justin Herbert's the highest rated quarterback on that list, Dave. The 4 guys ahead of him, as I say it again, are Micah Parsons, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Tristan Wirfs. Do you agree with those 4 guys being ahead of Justin Herbert?
I do. I do. I'll be honest with you. Those guys are, and the reason Wirfs is so important is because he protects the quarterback, right? I mean, when you saw him coming out of college, you're like, man, this guy, that was a great pickup. You're going to protect Tom Brady. That's a great pick. But when you have a guy like we have in Slater doing the same thing, you feel comfortable. It's almost like a wash to me. I think everyone has full faith that Slater's going to protect Justin Herbert when healthy. The other guys that you mentioned are just complete game changers. I mean, completely can change a game at any time. And Parsons, you and I and Mario spoke about it a couple weeks ago. He was, all of us, I think, chose him as our defensive player of the year. He's far and away the best defensive player in the NFL right now.
Yep. Not even close. What about you, Mario? Do you agree with those 4 guys ahead of Justin Herbert?
Yeah, I'd surprisingly put him above Tristan just because I'm like, I think he's kind of in that more elite category. Like, don't have him just outside, like just inside top 5. Let's make him a little comfortable in the top 5. But the Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Parsons ahead of him, I couldn't agree more. Parsons is generational talent, defensive side. I think when, I'm an old man, like, I don't know, 10 years older than Dave. And I'm sitting there, I'm going to talk about Parsons the way, like, Dave and people older than Dave talk about Lawrence back in the day. We're like, dude, this guy was a game wrecker. Like, everyone was terrified of him every Sunday. I think that's how we'll talk about Parsons. I think he's that big of a talent. And then when you look at Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, I mean, the effect that Chase had on that Bengals team just in 1 year. And then Jefferson this year, I mean, he's unguardable. He's literally unguardable. He's unbelievable. He's soon going to get that Calvin Johnson treatment where you got 2 guys on above him.
Yeah.
On goal line or just in any win game situation. Like, those guys right there are just generational talents that will continue to awe me for my whole life.
That's a great call. The comparison to Calvin Johnson's a great call because I think it's the closest thing to it. There are always great wide receivers in the NFL, but to say that you're in that category of a Calvin Johnson and Randy Moss is saying a ton, especially when it's a pass first league. That the talent's unbelievable. Hard to believe those 2 guys on the same damn team.
Oh.
Yeah, unbelievable. So here's the deal, though. If you look at this list, Josh, that you just read out, and you're in Florida right now, you're really pissed where 2 is, right?
If you're in Philadelphia, you're saying Jalen Hurts is the MVP of the league right now. Why is he number 9, right?
Yeah, that's funny because coming into this year, the talk was, is Jalen Hurts a starting NFL quarterback? Right now he's an MVP candidate, okay? And then you look at the same time, Tua, who if it's not – look, the 3 guys are going to be Mahomes, Hurts, and Tua are the MVP candidates, right, in the league right now? I can see Micah Parsons even getting some votes. But those are the 3 guys. And so Tua's year is amazing, and you wonder how long can he go being undefeated? What if he goes an entire season undefeated as a starting quarterback, the games that he starts and finishes? That doesn't happen in the NFL. It barely happens in college.
He should be the MVP of the league if he goes undefeated the rest of the way. I don't care. I mean, Jalen's great and Mahomes is great, but if you go undefeated on the Miami Dolphins, you're the MVP of the league, without a doubt.
Especially in that division. That's Pats twice a year, that's Bills twice a year, and that's Jets twice a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty hard. And I have a theory for why I think Hurts and Tua are pretty low.
Why?
Okay, so I was thinking of this. I'm just going to use Herbert, obviously, just because his position and everything. If you look at Hurts and Tua coming into this year versus last year, the difference of what they have talent-wise is insane. Tua gets a new head coach, kind of gets away from the Brian Flores situation, the owner telling him to tank, all that just toxic stuff you don't really want to be a part of. Gets rid of that, gets Tyreek Hill, so he gets that in return, and then he gets a Shanahan disciple. Boom, he's suddenly a great quarterback and not a bust anymore that some people thought he was. Then Jalen Hurts, you get A.J. Brown and quite possibly the dumbest trade we might ever see in NFL history. It's a trade I still don't understand. And he gets that, and he gets a defensive piece on the other side, and suddenly this team's looking pretty impactful, and suddenly he has a full team. So I think when you look at that, we're like, okay, talent-wise, you're obviously very good, but the situation around you has been incredible versus like a Herbert whose situation's been very tough and still putting up numbers. That's my theory. They don't say it's a good theory, but it's a theory.
Is that the way you used to argue in high school?
Yeah.
You said that to a teacher? I'm not saying it's a good theory, but it's a theory.
Everything started with a theory.
Mario, call your mom. That's it. That's what the teacher said. That's funny as hell. Look, man, here's the deal. The Chargers are in a good situation, obviously, with what they have. You got to surround Herbert with even more talent. You got to figure this whole thing out, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the general manager, maybe it's just help on defense. Right now, I think the team's biggest hole is defensive help more than anything else. When healthy, the offense, I think, is absolutely fine. But defensive help is what this team's going to need to become one of those upper echelon teams to not have these close games against teams like Arizona that are in situations that they're in. We have about 10 minutes left in the show. I do want to ask you guys about the playoff picture, though. Right now, the Chargers are not a playoff team, okay? And when you look at the odds of them making it, it's a 39% chance that they make the playoffs. Now, that can change, obviously, in just one weekend on what happens with the Chargers. But, guys, just start in the AFC right now. If the playoffs began today, okay, and you guys can start pulling teams out after I tell you the matchups. You tell me which teams you think are in, which ones are out. Number 1, Chiefs, they would get a bye. Okay, so week 1 of the playoffs would be the number 2 Dolphins against the number 7 Jets, of course, in Miami. Then you'd have the number 3 Titans hosting the number 6 Bengals, a game we just saw. And then you'd have the number 4 Ravens hosting the number 5 Bills. The Bills, which are not doing at all what I think people thought the Bills were going to do. Overall, Josh, when you look at that playoffs group right there, number 1, are the Chargers better than any of those teams I just mentioned in your mind? 2 is, do you think it stays the way it is, or do you think someone falls out?
First off, the 39% means nothing to me. It's like a fantasy football at 10:15 in the morning. It says you have a 12% chance of winning. I'm like, 10:15 in the morning. You have a 12% chance. You have a 12% chance of winning. So you talk about teams I believe in and teams I don't believe in. So one of these teams one and a half of these teams doesn't have a reliable quarterback. That's the Jets.
Yes.
They have Mike White going forward. Nobody, including Mike White, knows what he is. The Titans have Ryan Tannehill. And that's the team that relies the least on their quarterback, I think, out of the teams remaining in the playoff picture. But I believe in Patrick Mahomes and Tua and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. So I'd say the Chargers' best chance is Mike White screwing up and the Chargers getting in, because I do not think the New England Patriots are a good team. I actually think they're a bad team. If you look at the roster, I think the Chargers are far superior. I'd like to see the Chargers sneak in ahead of the Jets and the Patriots.
Yeah, you kind of stole the words out of our mouth. I think Jets are going to fall a little bit. I kind of agree with you. I don't think Mike White really knows who he is. He's like, wow, some games I look incredible. And some games I'm Sam Darnold seeing ghosts. He's like, I don't know what's going on here, man. And like just the remaining schedule is not the easiest. I mean, obviously you have Vikings coming up, and then you go Bills, Lions, who could be like weirdly fighting for a spot, Jaguars, who can like upset you, Seattle, who'll be fighting for a spot, and then who knows, maybe Dolphins clinch the division in that game. So Jets for me are 100% the ones where I'm like, I think they're going to fall. My big one that I think is really going to fall and could fall out of the playoffs. Now I'm going to sound like some people that would call it Herbert a social media quarterback in terms of a take, but I could really see the Ravens falling fast. Yeah. That's the team I'm really watching to tank.
I'm with you, Mario. Those are the 2 teams too. I think if somebody falls out, it's going to be the Jets and the Ravens. That they fall out and an opportunity opens for someone else. But the Ravens are an interesting team. I mean, defensively not bad. You have obviously Lamar Jackson, you have Andrews, but not a lot there. I mean, J.K. Dobbins has been hurt the entire time. Don't know when he's coming back. He's on IR, but he hasn't really been effective for them for almost 2 years now. So they haven't had much of a running game. I could see those 2 teams struggling. Overall, when you look at, as you said, Josh, the quarterback situation, which I think most NFL fans do, they sit there and go, this team is only as strong as their starting quarterback. The Titans, as much as they bully you around and maybe injure you a little bit by the time you're done playing them, it's still Tannehill. How many people have faith in Ryan Tannehill? And I think that's the big move with that organization. Through even as crazy as the A.J. Brown move was, sending him off to Philadelphia and basically having none of your wide receivers back from a year ago when you're the number 1 seed in the AFC, that the Titans don't have a very good roster. We've spoken about this a lot this year. Joe Burrow has beaten the Titans, not only knocked them out of the playoffs last year, beat them in Nashville again last weekend. This matchup's a bad matchup for the Titans. I don't think the Titans want to see the Bengals again.
No, not at all. I don't think anybody wants to see the Chargers either if we get Mike Williams back. That's their team. You look on the schedule and say, dude, they have so many options. They're the opposite of the Ravens and the Jets and some of these other teams that don't have crap on offense. I'll also point this out. If you watch NFL football, which if you're listening to the show, you obviously watch NFL football, the Titans and Ravens play the most unique brand of football. It's so weird to watch them on TV. First off, the Ravens try to get in field goal position every time for Justin Tucker, which I'm saying I wouldn't do the same thing, but they live off of 3 points. They have no receivers. They're one injury away from Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson to being like the worst team in the NFL. And the Titans, dude, they will curl route you to death. You watch when the Chargers play the Titans. They do 8-yard curl routes every play, or they'll hand it off to Derrick Henry. It's the weirdest thing in the world. They're not complete teams. That's why it bothers me so much when I see the Chargers are, fighting for their life. I'm like, dude, look who we have on our team compared to these other teams out there. It shouldn't even be close.
To the Chargers and the Ravens, the Titans and the Ravens are the king of just let's stay in the middle of the field, right? Most teams have these out routes. Dude, these guys, we want nothing to do with the sideline. Everybody, you better just keep jamming the middle of the field. That's all we're going to do.
Josh, when you're in high school, did your coach ever go, hey, if they line up 7 yards off the wide out, it's slant, it's a hitch route every single time? That's what the Titans remind me of. Dude, if you're a little far from them, it's hitch city.
Every time, bro. Every single time. And the crazy thing is, like, wouldn't you press the receivers if you're going against the Titans?
Yeah.
Like, they're not gonna throw it deep. Like, they're gonna hand it off or just throw an 8-yard curl route or a slant. You press the guy.
And if they can run it, which they do 80% of the time, you're already in position. You're that much closer to the line. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Mario, by the way, when you dropped that high school line on Josh's junior year of high school, he sees that the defense was giving him the deep route, and so he changed the play. First play of a playoff game, and he bangs his hand right on top of a guy's helmet, breaks his finger, and so even though not only did he change the play that made the coach extremely mad, he gets up and his finger is like pointed the wrong way and stuff, and now he's stuck like this the rest of the game with a broken hand, and he has no one to complain to because the coach is pissed at him already for changing the play. It was awful. Peyton Manning's like, dude, your spiral is crap. it was horrible. It was absolutely terrible.
That'd be fun going to the sidelines.
And they lost
in a shocking upset. But yeah, it was a genius move to change the play. I saw the same thing he saw, and then all of a sudden it's like, dude, nobody cares your finger is facing the wrong way now because you changed the play. Damn it. Josh does not enjoy that story. All right, so in the NFC, guys, real quick. All right, the NFC, the way the matchups go in the NFC, and we talked about this before as far as which teams that we think are the better teams. Obviously, the Eagles have the number 1 seed in the NFC. Number 2 Vikings would host the number 7 Commanders, which is kind of funny. All three of us are rooting for the Commanders. Like, I've never been a watching a football fan in my life, but I think there's such an underdog that all of us are kind of falling, rooting for the Commanders. Number 3 49ers would host the number 6 Giants. Talk about a huge ratings boost right there. That'd be amazing to see the two teams that have great histories, 3,000 miles away, number 1, number 2 media markets. And then here's another great game. Talk about ratings. We'd have number 4 Tampa Bay taking on number 5 Dallas. They would be hosting. Tom Brady would be hosting the Cowboys. And the matchups in the NFC, probably the worst rated game would be the Vikings Commanders. But those two games, Niners, Giants, Buccaneers, Cowboys, those are the kind of games that the ratings would be so big, you would think those are NFC championship game numbers that you couldn't. If you're the NFL again, you win again. It's but you look at that number 1 Eagles. Who's the best team in the NFC?
Eagles are the best team in the NFC, I think.
I think the
Cowboys. I think 49ers are probably the best team. They just lost Elijah Mitchell, but they're probably the best team. The last team I'd want to play for sure in the NFC.
Yeah, I agree. The last team I'd want to play against no matter what. They're like a team that it doesn't matter where they fall when it comes like postseason, like rankings wise. You just don't want to play them at all. The team I'd like to play, like if just higher ranking wise, dude, if I got the Vikings as like a low seed, sign me up. Sure. I'll go to Minnesota. Sure. Against that defense, sure. Kirk Cousins, give me it. I'm all set.
So tell me if I'm crazy on this one, guys. You can tell me I'm dumb. That's fine. All right. You guys already yell at me enough. But in my opinion, the NFL season, as much as people might complain, especially the players, go to the season's too long. 17 games is too long. It's just too much on your body, everything else. I honestly believe in this season, in 2022, this long season benefits 2 teams in the NFL more than any other teams in the NFL. The Niners right now, still trying to almost getting better every single week because of Christian McCaffrey and the boost of basically have a new guy, a new toy that is one of the best in the NFL. I think the more the Niners play, the better the Niners are going to continue to get. The other team, it's the Chargers. Mike Williams back. Bosa hopefully comes back. Rashawn Slater comes back. All of a sudden, those two teams, they need the length of the season that if you get a chance, I'm telling you, nobody's going to want to face the Chargers in the postseason when they're 100% healthy because they've discovered the other weapons that they've had to use, right? It's like when you break your arm. You may be right arm might be your strength, but all of a sudden you're able to develop your left because you've been forced to use it for 6 weeks. The Chargers now have more weapons and more options because of guys that maybe didn't have the confidence or the coaches and quarterback didn't believe in. That if you get all these guys back, this team's going to be ready to go. They're going to be strong, and no one's going to want to face this team in the postseason.
Yeah, we're built on ifs. Chargers they're built on ifs. I'm tired of
being built on ifs. I felt really good. And then you got to sit there and drop the ifs thing. Why? Why you got to do that?
I'm tired of this. Come on, man. We're the would have been Chargers.
Yeah.
Could have been Chargers. I'm sorry, man. Dude, you're always the one that says you demand more as a fan, right?
I do. But I'm not saying that this team stinks. I'm saying when healthy, that according to
when.
reports,
When and if.
When. Bose is not even
Sorry.
practicing yet.
Yeah.
That's
Come
my
on,
encounter.
man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not talking the rest of the show.
One question I have for you guys, because I was thinking about this, and someone said I was listening to a pod today. Are we worried at all about the Browns sneaking up with Watson coming back? Are we worried about that at all? Or are we, in a way, going that they could help us because they could take some W's away from some teams?
Do you have the Browns schedule in front of you right now?
I could
Deshaun
get it
Watson
up in,
comes
like,
back
3
this week.
seconds.
Yeah, if you could, but I know their first game's against the Texans. I mean,
Yeah.
how crazy is that? Deshaun Watson completely killed the Texas organization, and now he's going to go back and do it one more time. You know,
so
it's
sorry.
go ahead.
So teams that like matter to us playoff wise, they do have the Bengals after this weekend. Bengals lost to them already this year, and then they have the Ravens
when those
too.
two teams face each other, anything can happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
God dang it, man. You know what stinks? I hate Deshaun Watson. I hated him at
So
Clemson.
much.
I can't stand the fact that he's even in the NFL. I think the NFL dropped the ball on this whole thing. He's a bad dude, man. I don't root for guys like him. But right now, you're right. As you're open for the Chargers to make it in the postseason, all of a sudden you find yourself rooting for the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson to help this team out.
I hope they knock off the Ravens. I hate the Ravens too.
Yeah.
I don't like Deshaun Watson for obvious reasons. My last football game of all time, he beat us with 1 second left. So I'm not a fan of that. But how good is Deshaun Watson? He hasn't played in like 700 days, right? It was the last time he played football. Can't you just not play? I mean, he's really good, but can you just show up and be like that great of a player to lift you guys to the playoffs? Also, kind of weird thing. I know we probably shouldn't talk about this, but 10 of his accusers are going to be at his first game.
Is that right?
Interesting. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, how would he know they're there unless they're going to get sideline passes?
I mean, he's not going to see them, but it's all over Twitter. I'm sure he knows. Yeah.
Yeah. And who released that? And why would you like? There's a lot of weird things with that thing.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I don't even know if we should talk about it, but that's kind of weird. I thought.
Yeah. Well, screw Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, we can all agree on that.
Yeah, we can all agree. Screw him.
All right, here we go. So look, in a couple of days, we're going to come back. We got a ton of Raider notes. This is actually exciting. We always talk about Raider Week. You know, Marty Schottenheimer always got in our heads as Charger people saying it's Raider Week, gentlemen. You know, and this is time where it's pretty exciting. Raider fans couldn't be more hopeful for their team. 2 exciting overtime wins, back-to-back weeks. They get a game back at home. Khalil Mack goes back to play in front of Raider Nation. There are a bunch of different storylines there. We have a crazy Max Crosby story to tell you when we hook up next time. But there's a lot of things going on in this game. This game means something. Just like it did last year where whoever won went to the postseason. This is a really big game between 2 teams inside the AFC West. Chargers visiting the Raiders. We'll have a ton of information for you in a couple days. And then, of course, we'll make our picks as well. We'll ask Mara whose overtime game of the week is, all that stuff that we normally do on a Thursday. Thursdays are always great shows, but we'll be back in a few days. Again, thank you for listening to the Bolt City podcast where I'm never right. These 2 guys gang up on me. Again, courtesy of Odyssey. For Josh Palais, Mario Heron, I'm Dave Palais. We'll see you in a couple days.